Bit of a lay day here at the Luderitz Speed Challenge. It's sort of in between those forecasts. We've got a big one coming up and we thought what better thing to do on this day is give you a walk through the course. It's obviously a 500-meter course, but it's not as simple as just sailing down the thing. So who better to talk us through the course than a member of the 50 knot club? We have got the British record holder, Farrel O'Shea. He has been down this course at a whopping 51.20. Is that right?
51.20, yeah.
51.20 in 2015, and that day was pretty windy. I've been here so far and we haven't had any of those sort of windy days. We've had a couple of nice 35s, and I'm hearing from Farrel after speaking to him, which is why we're doing this, that on a big forecast day when it is howling, it's a whole different ball game.
Yes, this environment here on a mellow day can be like a bit of a Sunday afternoon stroll.
Yeah.
But the environment when it gets windy here can get pretty hostile pretty quick.
Starting technique, okay, so maybe talk us through a couple of different starting techniques when it is 50 knot weather.
When it's 50 knots you see all sorts of starts getting going here. Me personally, I like the security of starting in the straps. That's one less thing I've got to worry about. It needs quite a lot of wind to lift you out, but at least then you're pretty stable and you haven't going to wobble it around too much trying to move your feet. So I always go for the start in the straps. However, I've seen in 50 knots, the kings of Luderitz like Antoine, they just hop on like there's no wind, straight on. They're not wasting too much energy, relatively speaking, and they seem to manage it. So it's whatever floats your boat, I think.
Quite a big starting box. A lot of guys I've seen when it's windy maybe starting towards that leeward side. Any problems associated with that?
No, I think the problems are probably associated with the windward side. This starting box is wider than we've ever seen. However, it's also broader than we've ever seen. So in light winds, I think you can start at this top side quite easily. But in strong winds, you're probably going to need to air towards the leeward side to give yourself a bit more angle to play with.
Okay, so we're going to go out of the start box now. We've started, we're getting up to speed. Hopefully we're in the straps, we're in the harness, we're getting settled, and we go towards that first corner where shit starts to get real.
It starts to get honky-tonk on that corner.
Okay, so we're coming up to the corner. This is actually where the red and green flag man is. If the green flag is up, it's okay for you to start back in the start box and head down the course. If the red flag is up, it means someone is on the course and you cannot leave that starting block. It's a safety issue, and in fact, it's probably a very serious one.
It's not sailable everywhere here. The sailable area is much narrower. You certainly haven't got a moment where you're going to be avoiding or going round somebody that stacked it in the middle of the canal.
Yeah, exactly. So make sure the green flag is up. This first corner, this is the Slingshot Effect. This is where you set up for your 50 knot run.
There's a few critical moments, I think, on the course here. This is one of them. You've got to exit this corner with some modicum of control and with some real power down. This is where I think the game can be won or lost.
What's your tactics for this corner? Is there a tactic?
I think there's always a tactic in my world. Some people overthink it and some people underthink it. I'd like to be a little higher to windward if possible. You don't always have a choice here. Sometimes you've got to go where it takes you, right? But if you're a little bit higher, you can see a bit more scope around the corner. Then you've got more options. Otherwise, you're a bit close to the leeward bank, your options are reduced, and you may not have enough angle on a windy moment to actually get around.
Yeah. Coming into this corner, what speeds are we looking at? You know, if you're on for your, let's say, 50 knot run, which there's only 11 guys done that in the world, so you're one of them. What sort of are you aiming for? You're obviously not checking your GPS, but you've probably checked your tracks. You know the deal.
Yeah, with the benefit of hindsight and the technology of the GPS, it's quite interesting to have a look back at what you think you're doing here and you're not. But I think when you're on the approach here, you're a reasonably tight wind angle, getting yourself in control and making sure everything's hunky-dory. You're probably only in reality doing maybe 30 to 32 knots as you start to come into the moment where you're going to bear off around this corner. So you're not going that quick. However, There's a real big increase in pressure here. This corner is notoriously windy, and you've got to try and use that for maximum acceleration.
Okay. I've heard about the slingshot effect. This is talked about when people are trying to get peak speeds. Maybe you can explain to me what that is.
The slingshot, here you've got no choice. You have a change in direction. It's a bit like sailing a banana course. You've got to go down the course, you've got to get in and get out, but that's where the acceleration happens. As you take the pressure and accelerate around this corner, the speed increases exponentially. So within a few seconds, you'll be going for your 30 knots here inside, you'll be going 40, 45, and hopefully something approaching 50 nearer the line.
Okay. Talking about the line, let's go over to see where that 500 metre starts. Okay, so we're in the water just before the start line. We've just come round the first corner. We're probably hitting this place at around 45 knots.
I think you'd like to be somewhere north of 45 at this point. You're only half a second from the start.
Okay. We've got red buoys in the water. This is kind of the course area. You've got to keep inside of this to get a clean run.
I think what they're saying is it's not super wise to be the windward side of these red buoys.
That sounds about right. But what have we got? How many centimetres of water here?
We've got plenty of water here. We're only running fairly small fins, max 20. You'd run over this depth.
Yeah.
The observer here from the WSSRC, who are making sure fair play is adhered to at all times, will be checking these water depths every day the channel is run.
Yeah.
So at least we know we're all running legal. However, don't confuse that, we're running safe.
Yes. Exactly, I think you hit the nail on the head there. There is an official rule. The official rule is half the depth of the beam of the board, which means the width of the board, which a lot of these speed boards are 40 wide, so the water has to be 20 centimetres deep.
Exactly, yeah. Half the immersed beam, I think the term is. However, there's not many people running a board less than 40, and of course there's not many people running a fin much less than 19 or 20. So if you're only running in 20 cm, you've probably got a problem coming anyway.
Okay, so we're here on the start line. Obviously behind us, the timing system isn't set up today. Obviously there's no wind on the channel, but the camera and everything's set up in the box?
Yeah, so what we're running here is 2 video cameras, one at the start, one at the finish, and trying to then calculate the distance travelled over time, which will give you your speed. So the camera's permanently running inside that box at a rate of about 1,000 frames a second, so that they can recheck back on it and give you a super accurate speed over the distance of the course.
Okay, so on a day where we're running the channel, as far as I know, it's manually done for that time at the day, so it can be quite close, but then at the night, which is why we always get the official results late at night or early next morning, it's checked on the cameras and recalculated.
That's exactly it. There's somebody pressing a key on the keyboard when they see you crossing these transits here at the start. But of course, we have to run much more accurately than that. So it's a very good guide. However, the real guide's the video. And when they go back to that later, it can often vary considerably.
I've got a funny story about that, because I was speaking to him the other day. You were saying, I think on the board it had you doing over 50.
Yeah, on a windy day here, I had on the board at 50.01, but as luck would have it, they downgraded me to 49.99.
That's almost the worst, isn't it?
It's probably one of the low moments of that day, yeah.
How long were you sitting on that before you managed to break it?
I wasn't sitting on it that long, but probably about half an hour.
Okay.
However, it was a fairly disappointing half an hour, I can tell you that.
Okay, let's go and have a look at the start line. Okay, so this is the actual start line. As you can see up there, we've got the first corner we were at before. Not that far away, but what, 100 metres, something like that?
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Far end of the corner's maybe about 100 metre. Near end of the corner's probably only about 75, 80. So if you go too low, coming round the corner, you run up, is a little short.
Yeah.
Is a difference in about a second if you can go high, which might give you about 3.5 seconds to the start line. We're roughly travelling maybe 25 metres a second, more or less.
Yeah.
But if you go low, you're going to have less time. So stay high, keep your options open.
Okay, that sounds like very good advice. 3.5 seconds to 100 metres. That's quicker than Usain Bolt, that's for sure. So tactics sounds like staying high is going to be the key, because like Farrel says, you increase the distance you have to cross this start line at the speed you want to do. On your record-breaking run, what speed are you crossing this line at?
Just a tad under 50, about 49.7, 49.8.
Okay.
It's incredibly difficult to cross this line at anything approaching 50 knots.
Yeah. So we're what, a second after the start line here?
Well, to here to the start's about 50 metre. You'll be travelling that in about 2 seconds.
Okay. So still plenty of depth for water. I don't like him. He's maybe got a bit too long a rope on him.
Yeah, he's a bit of a bad boy, isn't he? Huh?
He's ruining your line.
He's ruining your line a little bit, but he's trying to tell you something.
Yeah, exactly. The red buoys obviously denoting the shallower spots, and you have to stay inside those red buoys. It's there's a few deep spots. Either that or I've got short legs. Woo-hoo! Yeah, so no problem with grinding your fin here, that's for sure. So we're kind of at the midway point here of the 500 metre run, and this is kind of a seesaw moment, isn't it? I mean, you're coming from, well, maybe you could tell us.
I think right now you've had a moment coming to this point where the pressure's been very even in the sail, and you can squeeze and squeeze it, and you'll find yourself actually going faster and faster. We're now going to approach a real critical point, a point that can be make or break for most people.
At this part of the course, the pressure changes considerably. When we were looking at your 50 knot run on the GPS, there was definitely a dip in your speed around this point.
I think most people struggle to manage this part of the course, myself included. What I think you'll find is, in the big gusts, there's not a lot of difference, relatively speaking, between us and the guys at the top. What they're doing, they're managing this problem area of this slight lull in the wind strength much better than anybody else. And of course, not only are you losing pressure in the sail, you're losing pressure on the fin. What most people do, they tend to oversheet at this point. And then, we're going to find out a little further down, the wind's going to come back. How do they recompensate for that?
This is the lighter bit of the course. I mean, I've felt it on those lighter wind days. And, you know, it's that light, I'm almost coming up into the windward bank.
Yeah.
Do you ever have that problem when it's super windy?
I think the problem can take you either way. So, of course, when the wind lightens, it can change angle a little bit.
Right. So
you could get luffed up a little bit, you lose pressure, and the only way that things want to compensate if you don't retrim is either going to push you into the bank, or vice versa. If you over trim it, you can drift away because you won't have any pressure on the fin, and you can end up very close to that gnarly wall there before you even know it.
I don't like the sound of that. I mean, I've seen some pretty bad crashes, and I'm guessing they can happen very quickly.
Yeah, you won't have any very little time to react. So we can see how wide it is at this point. Reasonably wide, probably it could be 10 metre at this point, but we're going about 25 metre a second on some vector across the canal here. You've got very little time to recompensate for a mistake.
Quite a pivotal part of the course. If you're on for 50 knots, I guess this is the critical point.
Okay, we're coming out of what is essentially a lull in the wind in this section we've just come through here. And here, the wind, it's coming back, and it's coming back big time. And it's coming back at a slightly different angle than we've been sailing here. Anticipation is everything in this little moment. And this gust here, it'll take you like a rocket ship to the line. So it's time to cling on again.
Okay, so you've got to get this bit right. I have heard of people levitating across. Is this where it happens? I'm guessing it is.
Yeah, there's some people that have lost their humility very quickly at this point. If there's one accident black spot, this could be one.
Okay. And what is the reason for that? You lose pressure in your fin. I'm guessing it's from the different pressures you've just experienced.
Yeah, you've gone through a slightly lighter pressure moment and then you've hit essentially what is a really strong sustained gust. So it's picking your speed back up. At that point, you're going straight, so you've got no slingshot to take into account. You can't go anywhere. Yeah. We're in a narrow canal, right? And the pressure increases dramatically. It tends to then push people across the canal.
And what do you do in that position?
If you've got your wits about you, you've anticipated it, you sheet in, you keep going. Okay. But you've got to anticipate it. Some of the great guys that sail in this canal, like Bjorn Dunkerbeck, they're not moving a whole lot coming down here, but actually they're moving enough that they're actually trimming the sail all the time. To the eye, it looks like nothing. They've retrimmed, ready for this. They can take it on board, take it in their stride.
I'm nervous just listening to him. So like I say, this is make or break. This is your sort of final furlong to the end. Speeds wise coming into this gust?
You'll be coming in somewhere, it depends how quick you're going, of course, but you'll be coming in under max speed. It's going to pick you up here probably another 2 or 3 knots in max speed. So it's quite a change in speed here.
Okay, right, let's pull down towards the finish because this is it. This is the final bit. So here we are at the finish, and I'm guessing this is when you're hitting maximum velocity.
I don't think you're always going faster here than you can be somewhere in the top third of the course, but you're going very fast compared to the little lull you've just been through, and you've hit the honky-tonk gust that's going to take you like a rocket ship to the end.
Okay. Any tactics for finishing? You know, what you're doing? Are you using this gust? Because I know it gets super strong down this bottom end.
Well, I think in sailing terms, we could probably all think I'll use that gust and bear off on it, but you've then got the danger of where you're going to cross the line. And if you end up crossing the line in this half, somehow you're going to have to cut the speed out, and your only option is to go towards that bank, which is not your best option.
No,
so I see probably the king of Luderitz is Antoine. He always holds the power and goes tight, and he's got way more options to try and stop in the box and dictate where he's going, rather than the wind dictating where you're going to go.
So self-preservation comes into it.
Well, I think there's a few things happen. It's not just self-preservation. There's an element of that. You think you're going to bear here and go much quicker across the line, but you're going very quick anyway. But the reality is, what we do see is people in their mind's eye, they start to see this finish line here, they already start to stand up because they're not liking the stopping distance. Yeah. And a lot of people stand up too early.
We're pretty much halfway into this finishing box. How much have you slowed down when you've got to this point, when you're trying to cross that finish line at full speed?
It's going to take a while to scrub off any of the speed. Your best option to get rid of the speed is to jibe, or start to lay down the jibe a little bit. You've probably only done 2.5 seconds from the finish to here. If you get one of those little stuck in the harness lines, it's time to sharpen up and get out.
So, I mean, the tactics for slowing down, like you say, I've watched the master Antoine Albo come in here and laying it down at, 50 knots or something. That seems to be the stopping technique of choice.
Yeah, I think the harder you lay it down, the quicker you're going to stop. And the better you are at it, the safer you're going to be.
Yeah. Any other techniques that other riders have used to stop?
I think you've seen every technique applied under the sun here. Some pretty, some not so pretty.
I've heard the bouncing bomb, Mr. Grinnell.
Well, Grinnell's a special case, right? He's a special case in the start. He's possibly one of the worst starters, but he's definitely one of the worst finishers. However, in the middle of the course, he's definitely one of the best.
Exactly. I was going to say, it doesn't matter how you stop as long as you stop. But there is a case for getting out of this finishing box as quick as possible.
I wouldn't be admiring your GPS too much on a windy day in the middle of this municipal pool. Somebody's going to be coming down here pretty quick, and quite a lot of people very out of control.
Yeah, I can imagine. So this is the point where the run is finished. Like Farrel's saying, you might be admiring your GPS. Don't do that. Get out the water. What's the next plan?
The next plan, the guys at the finish here pop up with a little trailer. They're super helpful. Without these guys, helping it here on a windy day in here. In Antoine's words, it's apocalyptic. It's a very hostile environment down here when it's blowing. Get on the trailer, the guys, the local guys, they really help you, and then just sit tight and trundle back up to the top.
And go back for another run, I guess.
Go back for more punishment.
Yeah, oh, it sounds good. There we go. So that is the course rundown. I'm sure when it happens in real life, it's going to be a lot different. I've heard stories of this sort of desert area here, the wind actually picking the pebbles up and throwing them across. A lot of guys using ski goggles to come down here. It sounds nasty. We might be getting one of those days next week. So stay tuned to the Luderitz Speed Challenge and Windsurfing.TV, and hopefully we're bringing you some action early next week. I'm glad I didn't go that way. It's deep there then. Looks deep there, mate. What the fuck is that?